In this lesson, we'll begin to talk about some concepts from geometry, and we'll be focusing on linear measurements. The objectives for the lesson are: number 1, use dimensional analysis to change units of measurement. Number 2, convert units within the metric system. Number 3, use dimensional analysis to change to and from the metric system. And number 4, solve application problems that involve units of measurement. Linear measurements are used to determine the length of an object, the distance between two things, or the distance around a shape, which we know as perimeter. In the English measurement system, or the system that we use in America, some common measures for length or distance are inches, feet, yards, and miles. In the metric system, the base unit of linear measure is the meter, and the related units of linear measure that we'll talk more about are the millimeter, the centimeter, the decimeter, the decameter, the hectometer, and the kilometer, also pronounced kilometer. Now here are some equivalent linear measurements with which you should be familiar. You probably should memorize these, although you might not have to do that for your final exam. These are good common measurements to know. And that is that 1 foot equals 12 inches, 1 yard is equivalent to 3 feet, and in a mile there are 5,280 feet. Now sometimes you'll need to just have an understanding of how long each of these basic measurements are. So, for example, if you want to estimate an inch, you can look at a single knuckle on your finger. And of course we all have different sized hands, but approximately 1 inch would be that knuckle for anybody. For a foot, the length of your foot, hence the name foot. And again, not everyone has a foot that is exactly 12 inches long, but this is just to give you an approximate idea of how long a foot is. And then for 1 yard, an outstretched arm. Now we're going to use this process called dimensional analysis to help us make unit conversions within the standard or American system and from the American to the metric. So we're going to use a concept called a unit fraction. A unit fraction is a fraction where the numerator and denominator represent the same value. Now they'll be in different units, but they'll be representing the same quantity. For example, since 1 foot is 12 inches, you can write a unit fraction, 1 foot over 12 inches, or 12 inches over 1 foot. And in dimensional analysis, we'll be multiplying a measurement by a unit fraction or by a series of unit fractions to convert it from one type of measurement to another. So let's start with some examples here. We want to convert 375 miles to feet. So we need to know our equivalent measurements. Well, we know that 1 mile is 5,280 feet. Now for that reason we can write a unit fraction using these two equivalent measurements. So in dimensional analysis, your goal is to start with 1 unit, and for mile we'll put mi, and our ultimate goal is to end up with a different unit, which in this case is feet. So we multiply by a unit fraction where we put the units we want to remove or change in the bottom and the ones we want to end up with in the top. That's going to allow us to mark out the miles because we'll be converting over to feet. So we have to write 5,280 feet in every 1 mile. And of course, when you divide by 1, because this is like having a fraction over 1, when you divide by 1, you just get this number. But look what we have. We have 3.75 and 5,280 and feet left. So in order to get the answer, we multiply 3.75 times 5,280, and certainly you should take out your calculator to do that arithmetic. And it turns out that 3.75 miles is 19,800 feet. We can do a similar process or dimensional analysis to do 78 inches to feet. So we think about our equivalent measurements. We know that 1 foot is equal to 12 inches. We're going to start with 78 inches. We're going to multiply that by a unit fraction, but we want our final answer to come out to be feet. That means we want to remove the measurement of inches, so we need a unit fraction with feet in the numerator and inches in the denominator. So that's 12 inches for every 1 foot. These units will be removed, and we'll have 78 times 1 divided by 12, because now the 12 is in the denominator versus up here where both of the numbers were in the numerator. So in order to get our answer, we'll need to do 78 over 12 or divided by 12, and that's going to come out to 6.5 or 6.5 feet. So when you're doing dimensional analysis, just remember you're going to look for an equivalent measurements related to those that are in your problem. The one you want to end up with needs to be in the numerator. The one that you want to cancel or remove needs to be in the denominator. And then you've got your unit fraction that you multiply by to make sure you get that converted answer. All right, we'll do yards to inches. Now in this case, I'm going to write down that I know that there are 3 feet in 1 yard, and that I also know that every 1 foot has 12 inches. Now you may also have memorized that a yard has 36 inches, but I'm going to show you that sometimes you'll use 2 unit fractions to make a conversion. So we've got 10 yards, and we want to end up with the correct number of inches. Well, we've got 2 unit fractions that we're going to need this time. So the first time we're going to get rid of our yard units and change that over to feet. And we know that in 1 yard there are 3 feet. And then we're going to get rid of the feet units because ultimately we wanted our answer to be in inches. So remember, the one that you want your answer to be in goes on the top, and the one that you're trying to convert away from needs to go in the bottom, so that you can use some cancelization. So the yard unit with the yard unit, the feet units with the feet units, and of course I need to write my unit fractions in here. My equivalents, let's see, I've got inches, so there are 12 inches in every foot. Now notice the only unit remaining is this inches unit. That's what I want in my answer, so that's good. So I just have to go back and figure out what's in the numerator and what's in the denominator. Well, all of my denominators are 1. So a denominator of 1 means a whole number. I don't need to write that. But I've got a 10 times a 3 times a 12, and that's going to be 360 inches in 10 yards. Next example, 12,320 feet to miles. Well, I know that there are 5,280 feet in every mile. And you can have your equivalent units in a table written on a piece of paper nearby. But again, those three that we saw, you really should memorize. 12 inches in a foot, 3 feet in a yard, and 5,280 feet in a mile, because those are common measurements we'll use quite often. So we've got 12,320 feet. That's our original. We want to end up with a certain number of miles. How many miles are there? We're going to multiply by a unit fraction. We're going to get rid of the feet, so we put it in the denominator. We want our answer in miles, so we put that in the numerator. We look at our numbers for our unit fraction. There's 1 mile per every 5,280 feet. This time, the feet units are going to be gone, and you're going to end up with miles, which is what we wanted to get. And notice that the 12,320 is in the numerator, 5,280 is in the denominator, so we have to divide that out, and we get 2 1/3 miles. Now, if you do that on your calculator, you get 2.33333, etc., etc. Well, that means 2 1/3, or you could write that it is approximately 2.3 miles. Not exactly, but approximately 2.3 miles, or exactly 2 1/3 miles. So now we want to talk a little bit about the other system for measuring, and this system is called the metric system. It's used by many countries. In fact, most industrialized countries use the metric system because it is so easy to do the conversions back and forth between the different units of measurement. You'll see that there is a sort of a stair-step drawing here to help you learn to do this. And in the case of the metric system, you'll have a base unit, and that's going to be your middle step. And it can actually be a meter, a liter, or a gram. So meter and liter and gram are the base unit of measurement in the metric system. And we're talking right now about linear measurements, so we're going to be talking about the meter as our base. If you're moving from left to right, you have to multiply by a power of 10 the number of spaces you move. So if I start with meters and I want to move and change to millimeters, I've moved down 3, and so I would multiply by 10 to the third. Or 1,000. Multiply by 1,000, move the decimal 3 places to the right. If I start, for example, at centimeters, and I want to go to hectometers or hectometers, I move to the left 1, 2, 3, 4, so I would divide by 10 to the 4th. So the direction that you move tells you whether you divide or you multiply. So something that might help you to remember these stairs in the correct order, so that if you ever need to do a conversion and you don't happen to have this conversion chart in front of you, is to visualize this picture that you see here, and that is, as you can see, it's a kangaroo hopping down by David's Country Market. Kangaroo hopping down by David's Country Market. Kangaroo hopping down, base for by, David's Country Market. That's just a little mnemonic device to help you remember the first letter in each of these units of measurement. Now, some approximations for the metric system measurements. For a meter, the length of a leg, which is slightly longer than a yard. If you'll recall, we said a yard was about as long as an outstretched hand. Well, a leg is slightly longer than that, and a little bit more than 3 inches longer, actually, the meter is than a yard. And for a centimeter, it's smaller than an inch. Just kind of look at your little fingernail, and that gives you a good estimation of what a centimeter actually represents. So here is our conversion staircase to help us, and we want to change 10 meters to hectometers. So we're going to start here on the base meter, and we're going to go 2 places to the left. So that would be 10 meters equals Remember, if you start here with a 10.0, you move to the left 2 places, 0.10 hectometers or hectometers. And you can also write that 0.1 HM. We went 2 places to the left. That means we divided by 100. That moves your decimal point from the end back to the left 2 places. If we want to go from kilometers to millimeters, so we're starting up here at 1.75 kilometers. We're going to go to the right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we take our 1.75 times 10 to the 6th, and that's going to move the decimal 6 places to the right. I'm going to need to fill in with 4 zeros. So 1.75 kilometers is 1,750,000 millimeters. Now we need to convert between English and metric and English. And this is not as easy as just moving the decimal places, because this is not all within the metric system. So we have to have some approximate equivalent measurements, and we'll go back to dimensional analysis or use those unit fractions as we've done before. So an inch is approximately 2.54 centimeters. So I have a unit fraction where I can put 1 inch over 2.54 centimeters, or 2.54 centimeters over 1 inch. For a foot, it's 30.48 centimeters, so 1 foot over 30.48 centimeters, or 30.48 centimeters over 1 foot. A yard is 0.9 meters, so 1 yard over 0.9 meters, or 0.9 meters over 1 yard. And a mile is about 1.6 kilometers, so 1 mile over 1.6 kilometers, or 1.6 kilometers over 1 mile. Now, depending on the unit you want to end up with, you'll have to select the appropriate unit fraction or unit fractions to do your conversion. And I want to change 20 feet to meters. Now, ideally, I'd have feet to meters here, but you'll notice that I don't have feet to meters. So I may have to do another conversion first before I can use what's down here. So if I need yards to meters, the first thing I can do is I can take my 20 feet and I can change that over to yards just by using what I know, and that is that for every 1 yard there are 3 feet. So now what's going to happen is the feet are going to be gone, and I'm going to have 20 yards over 3. Now you could go ahead and divide that out, but it's not going to be an integer because it won't go evenly. It would be a mixed number. So I'm just going to leave it like that. And now I'm going to look for something that will give me meters and yards. So meters and yards. This is what I need right here. So 0.9 for every 1 yard. So that's going to help me because now the yard units will be gone, and I'll have 20 times 0.9 over 3, and the only units I have left are meters. So as soon as I do this arithmetic, 20 times 0.9 over 3, I will have my answer. And that comes out to be 6 meters. So 20 feet is approximately 6 meters. Now I want to change centimeters to inches. And in this case I'm lucky because I have a direct conversion here. I start with 175 centimeters. I need a unit fraction. It's going to help me get rid of the centimeters and end up with inches. So inches, centimeters. 1 inch is 2.54. So the centimeter units will be gone. I'll be left with inches, and I have 175 over 2.54 inches. So all I do is I divide 175 divided by 2.54, and that's going to give me an approximate value 68.9 inches. And I'm going to change this over to approximate, and I should do that here too. We've got some some rounded values, but we're making our conversions. So just be sure to pay attention to the exercises regarding how many places you should be rounding your answers to.